I'm Rana Al-Falaki.
I'm Bhavin Patel.
And welcome to
the Nail It Podcast.
This is your place to lead better, live fully and laugh more. It's your blueprint to optimal performance. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Nail It Podcast, your place to
lead better, live fully, laugh more.
Yay! How are you, Bav?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm amazing. I'm exhausted. I've had an incredibly long day at work with no lunch break. So what's new?
Yeah.
But now we're doing the podcast, which means my energy is up because we can have an amazing, fun discussion with our
your energy peaks. Your energy peaks in the evenings.
I am a night owl, actually. Yeah,
I
am much better in the evening. Someone asked me to wake up at 6 o'clock. It just depresses me the whole night before, even if I've still had 8 hours sleep. It's just body chronotype just doesn't like it.
Wow. I'm excited about our guest today, actually.
Tell us who our guest is.
We've got Len D'Cruz, who is my principal. He's my original mentor. He's probably one of the biggest names in dentistry when I graduated. And he's a general practitioner. He owns a practice in Woodford in Essex. He's the head of BDA Indemnity. He was far too humble when we asked him how he wants to be introduced, because he's got so many titles. He's sort of the original portfolio dentist, I'd like to call it. And he's a recent grandfather too.
Yay!
Welcome, Len.
Hi guys. Hi. Thank you very much for your wonderful introduction, Bhavin. Thank you.
No worries. I've known you 20 years now, Len.
You have.
Yeah, isn't it? Get less for murder.
You do.
He did try to make you sound a bit like a very old man with some of those.
Absolutely. He's succeeded as well.
Yeah. The grandfather and the what did you say? Kind of the old best known people.
Oh,
no.
I said he was one of the biggest names in dentistry when I first graduated.
Exactly.
Not that he isn't anymore.
I was going to say, you're trying to suggest he's some kind of a has-been.
No, not at all.
No, he didn't use the word old, so that's okay.
No, exactly.
Just implied it. That was all.
Yeah.
Len, welcome. It's such a pleasure for you to join us. And of course, being on the Nail It podcast, the first question we always ask is, what is your favorite quote and why?
Okay, thank you for this. My quote is, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And I think that's quite an interesting sort of concept, because there's a lot of things that come our way, and we can't control many of those things, but what we can control is our response to it. And we can't control people's reactions, people's behavior, people's conduct. We can't control situations. You can't control sometimes your own health, and I've had health scares. You can't control your work environment, but actually what you can control absolutely is your reaction to it. And I'm very much a believer in that's what gets you through difficult situations, gets you through a lot of challenges, because it's your reaction. You can choose your own reaction.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. And actually, I change it from reaction to response, because the response suggests it's just a tiny pause and then you have power, right? You have choice. A lot of people, when they're under so much stress, though, they react, and they act from a unconscious point of view, as opposed to, let me just pause, even if it's for a microsecond, so I can actually choose how I want to respond to this situation, because we're not in control of anything in many ways. The only thing we can control is ourselves, which gives us a huge amount of power, but at the same time can make you feel very it can add to your stress levels massively until you actually realize that you have that power. But when you let it go, my goodness, boy, do you feel
actually I like that concept of reaction, because response as opposed to reaction is very much it's whatever, it's a second or third reaction of Newton's laws, basically equal and opposite reaction. So response actually is better, actually. So I'll tell this guy, Charles Swindle, he said he's an American evangelical, tell him to change his quote.
Email him
and say it's not reaction, it's response. But yeah, because it is, you can be optimistic, you can be positive, you can be forgiving, all those sort of things, basically. So it is response. So yes, good point.
So I love the way that quote resonates with you. And there's always whenever any of our guests tell us what their quote is, and I know sort of my favorite quotes, it becomes a philosophy for how I choose to live my life. So is it the same for you in that way?
Absolutely, yeah. Because I think for me, I think I'm very optimistic. I'm a very happy sort of person, very easygoing. And I'm happy to share it. I've had a triple bypass a couple of years ago after a quite significant chest pains and stuff. And so, yes, it's pretty dramatic, but you can respond. And I've had spoken to so many people in that time who said, "Oh, they've gone down really badly." And think actually, it is your response. It is your choice to go off. And a year later, I did the couch to 5K, did the 5K, and actually felt, this is how I'm going to respond to it. So, and that's kind of not just that. All through my whole life and career, it's kind of things. There'll be grim things that'll happen to you around you, and how do you react to it? Because how you react will also influence how everybody else reacts around you. Because there's this kind of ripple effect around you. Because if you're going to be morose, if you're going to be depressed, if you're going to be down and out, pretty well everybody else is as well.
Yeah.
And when you're a leader, when you're part of an organization, whatever that organization is, the rest of the people get all that energy will be sucked out of them too, just as it is for you. So I think it's quite you have choice.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And especially in a life-threatening situation like that as well, you can, and there is actually a lot of depression and morbidity associated with bypass operations as well. So it does
Now
become,
you tell me.
yeah, yeah, but but you've obviously chosen not to. They've even done a lot of studies, on post-operative pain, specifically around cardiac surgery. I am friends with the top researcher who has the only clinic in the UK who runs this clinic. And interestingly, when they've done the research and they've looked at the risk markers for what causes that post-operative cardiac pain, it's usually when people are going into the operation with some degree of anxiety or low mood in the first place. And then they have an operation, same as everybody else, and yet they end up suffering massively, which just goes to show how much pain, of course, is psychological. Physical pain is psychological. Emotional pain is choice as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's actually just recent studies, slightly different, but it's to do with meditation and the spread of cancer, which came out last week or so, where the cortisol levels are actually affected by meditation. So you might think, well, I've got cancer, it's pretty daft that I'm actually going to be. Why would meditation affect it? And actually, they've done some significant research. It's not on people; it's actually in the lab. At cortisol cells and cancer cells and how they react. And they say actually it's to do with the levels of cortisol reduce when you are meditating. And therefore, if you apply that same concept, reduce cortisol in cancer cells, they actually will not, they won't survive basically. So which is fascinating. You'd think, how will that work? But that's actually just part of, that sort of whole concept of mindfulness and actually meditation, which has some powerful effects for sure.
Really powerful.
All of that from one quote.
Have you ever heard of Joe Dispenza?
No.
Okay, so it'd be interesting to read those books because he doesn't come at this kind of consciousness and beliefs and meditation from a spiritual aspect. He really tries to bring the science to it as much as possible. So his books are constantly quoting studies, and he's on a mission, to get people doing this deep meditation. And so many people who have joined his community. He's seen people getting out of wheelchairs, cured themselves from Parkinson's, from MS, from cancers, through these practice of a very deep type of meditation. And they are constantly recording science, taking tissue samples, blood samples, even breast milk samples, to show the difference in the composition and the cells and the cortisol levels once you have, in their case, been on one of their 7-day retreats. So he's really on a mission to realize that we all have this ability to heal ourselves.
Interesting. Yeah.
And of course, me as a periodontist, I see what stress does to people's bodies.
Yeah.
You literally, like that, within 3 months, you can go from no issue to to masses of bone loss. So it's all about switching on the genes, right?
Yeah.
And again, comes down to choice.
It's all
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
this positive mindset, isn't it? And I know what you like to say a lot is saying yes to things, Len. And so it's
Yeah.
having that positive mindset and having this growth mindset, I guess. And that probably takes us to, your journey in dentistry. Do you want to give us a little talk about what you've done and what you?
Yeah, from I'm actually lucky enough, and I think part of my life we've talked about this before, these sort of sliding doors moments when things happen, where you aren't necessarily in the situation, suddenly sliding doors happens, and you suddenly got this opportunity, and bought a practice within literally a couple of years of doing my VT, and most people saying you did what within a couple of years. So did it, stepped on that trajectory, and carried on, and built the practice from there. Then got involved again. Somebody phoned me up and said, would you? I used my sort of common thing is to say yes. So people, my trainer was he was involved in the local dental committee. He was involved in the BDA, and he kind of said basically, why don't you come along to these meetings? So eventually, I just kept on saying yes, yes, yes. I became an editor of a couple of the local dental committees from the sections, British Dental Association sections. And I kept on. So then I got involved in more and more organisations as an editor, as a writer. Got involved with more and more people, and eventually, I started writing a lot for the dental journals. And eventually, somebody contacted me and said, "Well, you look like you might be interested in becoming part of our team at Dental Protection." And thinking, I know nothing about law. Well, so I said yes, and went on from there, and then did a law degree and various other things. So it is. So I think the key is to say yes. Often people don't have the courage to say yes because they don't think they've got the skill set. They don't think they've got the ability. There's a lot of glass ceilings that people stare through but never break through because they think they're just not ready for this. And I think it's a peculiarity of people who want to do the absolute best and think they're not ready enough, so they want to be ready before they actually take on the job or take on the task, and that is more challenging because a lot of people it probably there is a gender difference because women tend to want to be perfect before they do the job. Men kind of busk it a bit and then carry on and do it. They do a good job eventually, but they don't sort of have those hang-ups. So I think it's ability to say yes, have the courage to say yes, and whatever those people are asking you to do, whether it's to write an article, and we've done, you and I have done articles together, you go on projects together, you do things together, or you do it on your own. I was an examiner, youngest examiner for the DGDP at the time, because somebody said, why don't you go? So I'll have a go, basically. So then you do those things, and then you build up the confidence. And I don't think it's, I look at my own kids, they marvel at how well you've done. You think, but it's taken years to get here. You can't do this just by waking up thinking, I'm going to do this. And I think that's also part of the challenges for young people is they don't necessarily take up those opportunities when they're given to them, but also they lack and I think it's also the workplace. We live in a post-COVID world where people don't have those opportunities, and I think that's also a challenge. So sometimes saying yes is actually more difficult than it was probably when I started, for sure.
I think there are two aspects there. There's the yes, say yes. It's kind of, there's this phrase, isn't it? Say yes and worry about the how later.
Yeah.
Essentially what you're saying. I'm very much one of those people, but I think it does tend to be with people who have a bit more of an entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm going to ask Bav in a minute to kind of bring up like disc profiles. We're going to say, what disc profile do you reckon Len is? I'll let you work it out in a second. I think I know. Whereas other people, it's not even often it's crippled by fear. It's crippled by worry. There's too stuck in their heads is what you commonly hear. So you're so stuck in your head that you can't switch off, and you're constantly thinking about the how instead of, look, just say yes. It's like get on the funfair ride, okay? Get on the funfair ride and then just enjoy the ride because it's going to work out. You have to believe it's going to work out, and then you will find a way. But by the time I've done a skydive, by the time I was up on the aeroplane, well, hey, there were two ways down. The plane was going to crash, or I had to jump. It's kind of like work it out afterwards, and then enjoy the moment. The other point I wanted to ask you about is you said we're in a post-COVID world and it's harder to say yes. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because you're now lacking confidence. So there's a lot of
Right.
people sitting at home, not communicating, not building up those communication skills that will give them the natural resilience. When somebody says no or says yes, you think, yes, I can do that. And because they've been brought up, youngsters, people going through who are going through school at the time, now university potentially, had that sort of lack of engagement and now struggle necessarily to work in the workplace. And we're continuing. Lots of officers still don't expect people to come in. They may do 1 day a week, and those people who have joined those organisations are sitting there and thinking, "How do I get on? How do I get on?" And so they don't have the opportunity for someone to ask them, "Do you want to do this?" So they can't have the opportunity to say yes. So because they don't get seen. So I think it's a real challenging environment for what we used to say quite easily face to face was ask me and I'll say yes. Now it's I'm not really sure. Can somebody ask me on Teams? I'm not sure. So I think that's more of a challenge going forward.
Yeah.
I think there's a generational difference there, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we're so much in this digital space, aren't we, as well, where it becomes WhatsApp messages. But that's now I'm showing our age because the younger lot are not WhatsApp messages at all, are they? It's all Snapchats. But then it's emails as well. It's kind of like, okay, well, I've done my task because I've emailed that person, but then
Yeah.
about the follow through. Why don't you just pick up the phone? The world of AI. I mean, half the time it's impossible to get past an AI bot to speak to somebody because I've ended up screaming at the phone, like, what don't you understand about I need
Frustrating.
sort out my bank account? And then you've got this robotic voice saying, did you need to do? Just like, no, but did you need to do? Oh, it drives you round.
And then it turns 5 o'clock and it's like, all agents are closed now. Go tomorrow.
I know. So,
But it's also,
so we're in that, and you've got the younger generation as well. Like you say, they just don't want to talk to anybody because everything is digital. They type at a ridiculously fast speed. They speak at a ridiculously fast speed, and the interaction isn't there.
Yeah, and I think it's also I struggle on Teams because obviously, so you meet up at a certain time. There's all 10, 20 people there. You have a conversation. You can't. It's before you have a meeting. You walk in 5 minutes before. You have a chat. How's your day? Have a cup of coffee. You can turn to somebody and say, "I'm not impressed with this speaker" or whatever. Now it's complete silence. Everybody's kind of looking at your faces, but there's no ability to interrupt anybody. So the meeting ends very quickly. Nobody's really achieved anything, and you move on. But you've ticked a box to say yes, I've had a meeting. So it's a difficult world for us to navigate. The next generation, I don't know, maybe they're used to it.
Yeah. I think I'm grateful for the fact we do actually still get to speak to human beings
Yeah,
in our
exactly.
work, don't we? So, Bav, come on then. What did you work out? Disc profile.
I think Len's an interesting character because he sways more towards I, definitely. He's a people person, and he's very much so that way led. But also I think he gets bored quite easily. I think he always has to have a task to do. So if I was going to say, I'd say he's an ID.
I was thinking just that. Yeah.
So again, we're quite similar. I'm more of a ID. You're a DI, right?
No, I'm an ID.
Are you an ID? Okay, so yeah, I think Len and yourself are quite similar. But which is great. Like I say, it's more of a people person, but it's also having that entrepreneurial attitude going, do you know what, we're going to do this, and I'm going to say I'm going to do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a finished product, but you'll just get on with it and get it done.
Yeah, that's probably a good analysis actually. Because I would, I don't want to retire. That's the problem because you think, oh my God, what am I going to do? So yeah, it is that that desire to want to do things and move on to the next thing. Yeah.
The beauty is being able to
play
do
with
it.
your grandchildren with
Yeah, the beauty is being able to do it because you want to do it as opposed to have to do it now, right? It becomes more of a passion. So that's not a job anymore, then, is it? It's a passion project.
Yeah, for sure.
So for those who don't know the DISC profile, then the I is
influence,
and the D is
dominance. So dominance, influence, conscientiousness, and steadiness.
Yeah, and I was thinking if anyone is in the C is conscientiousness, then they are definitely the people who are not saying yes.
No.
because they need all the details before they can step into the category. And until they know that type of person drives me around the bend, because I'm like, you don't need the details, just it will be fine, just we'll work it out.
And was it analysis paralysis? So so Len, I don't know how much you know about the dish profile, but that's literally the polar opposite of us. I think we're all eyes here. So it's kind of like they're the accountants of it. So they're the ones that will hold you to account.
Yeah, it's interesting because okay, but so it leads me on to one of the other points I wanted to make was this idea of I believe in having aspirations, not goals. And this might sound a really strange thing, basically, but actually, I think life gets in the way of goals. So I find that because I mean, who has kept any of their New Year's resolutions, for goodness sake? Either this year or last year, and it becomes just a slightly depressing catalogue of analysis. When you look back, you say, "This is what I wrote." You're thinking, "Yeah," but within weeks or months, forget months, weeks, it's all forgotten. So because life gets in the way of all those sort of ambitions. And I think that you can stage your life, and one of the concerns that I have is about people having a sort of stage managed life. Yes, I've been lucky to have, you step on a trajectory, you move on, you buy the practice, you get married, you have kids, you buy a house, you do all those sort of things basically, and you've been reasonably successful in your career. That's great, and I've been very lucky not to have problems along that route. But I don't think if I'd at 23 or 24 years old and said, right, this is what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to get to, I don't think I'd be happy doing it. I don't think I'd be very disappointed because it never really worked out the way I'd planned. I certainly didn't plan 4 kids for starters. But so that was, if you plan it. So for me, the difficulty comes in when people get disappointed because they plan it in such a way to say, I want to do this by this by this. There are some people who do it exceptionally well, and one of my FDs did exactly that. We actually did when I was doing a certificate in mentoring course. He was going to be the mentee, and I sat down with him, and he planned his entire next 10 years, which is basically, I'm going to do oral surgery, I'm going to set up a practice, I'm going to be a VT trainer, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have 2 kids. I'm thinking, right, and literally 10 years he did it. He absolutely did. I'm thinking, oh my goodness me. Okay, so that was absolutely, and that's fine. That suits some people, but
it was obviously your amazing mentoring that did that.
exactly. So I think we can get hung up on that. I think having these really, really detailed plans, and it's when Bhavin and I talk to FDs coming to the end of the year, they can have plans, but we kind of suggest just be flexible. Be flexible and be your own person. You don't necessarily need to follow. And the difficulty is you look over your shoulder, you look to the person next to you, particularly because it's social media, you think, what are they up to? I need to be doing the same. And there's a classic fear of missing out. You think, I need to do this because everybody else is doing it. And the reality is that's probably not the case at all.
I think we've also found that the younger generation are a lot more about well-being and looking after themselves, and they like to have that work-life harmony. And it was quite surprising. Me and Len, we did a talk a couple of years ago, do you remember? And we were asking them how many days a week they were wanting to work. And it was so funny. There was 1 or 2 that were like, I only want to work 1 day a week.
Exactly.
You just graduated. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Exactly. I'm going to open a gym. Are you? Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But most people, I mean, now when you look at the generational differences, and they've done a lot of surveys in the business world and realized that the younger generation now, it's not just about pay, it's about quality of life. And when they're looking to join somewhere, they are looking to see how much their well-being is looked after, how much they might be able to work 4 days a week. And in dentistry, the GDC have certainly found that the vast majority do not want to work more than 3 days when they've done the surveys. But also with what you were saying, Len, about the idea of being flexible and having aspirations. I mean, that's very much what the philosophy I take on. It's the part of the nail it philosophy of, I mean, of course, when we coach someone, we'll break it down into like, okay, what are your goals? But we go much, much deeper than that, because you've got to shift you. And then from that, yes, okay, you're never going to get anywhere unless you take the action steps. but it's one little step at a time. But you also have to know what happens when you get to a dead end. And that actually a dead end is often an opportunity. It's an opportunity to change direction. It's an opportunity to become resilient. It's an opportunity to bounce back. So understanding that sometimes exactly you may have an idea about something, but if you keep it as an aspiration, and of course you take the action steps towards it, it allows you to flow that way much more easily. And it also allows you to and not get fixated on the how. Whereas when you set rigid goals, you're so fixated on the how that then if something doesn't work out, then you're stuck. And actually the statistics are 8% of people only ever achieve their goals based on New Year's resolutions. And usually, but of those 8, if they get past the end of January, then they have a 90% success rate.
Yeah, because it's about habit, isn't it? It's all those how much of a habit you can make it, basically. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I you know when Bhavin and I were talking to these FDs at these foundation dentists, I wasn't initially, when I heard those sort of things, I was probably slightly critical of that concept. But actually, the more I think about it, the more I think they've got it right. Because we have spent, nobody ever said to me, are you going to work 5 or 6 days? The answer was, are you working 5 or 6 days a week? Not, are you working 3 or 4 days a week? And there was a natural expectation. We just said, oh, that must be good. And I think our generation think it's a great thing to do that, to work those 5-6 hours. It's the same generation who work, the doctors work night shifts, work 1 in 2s the weekend and stuff. It's a great thing. It's character building. It's not character building at all. It's the most destructive thing you can do. But you only realize that later, a lot later, that actually, and maybe half the illnesses that people have, the cortisol. I certainly believe that my health scares were caused by cortisol running through me every day of the week at a low level, but there all the time, constantly. And you just deal with it. You think you're dealing with it, and then until something happens. And I think that's the tragedy, that your sort of concepts about people understanding the work-life balance, but understanding how to manage their own ambitions is so important. Because it's nobody taught that us. Nobody spoke to us about that. It was kind of a why would I talk to you about those sort of things? Because I did it. You must do the same.
Yeah. I think that goes hand in hand about.
Sorry to have to say, it isn't even about. It is so much of it is about who you are, because yes, role model yourself on other people, absolutely, but stand in who you are and become who you are, and don't be ashamed of that. So your work-life balance, your life harmony, your living, as I call it, Bav likes to call it work-life harmony, is going to be, that picture is going to be represented by something completely different to someone who might be your best friend, and you shouldn't be afraid of that. You need to be able to live your life and stand up for who you are, but you need to do the work to understand who you are in the first place.
That's exactly what I was about to say. That you've just sort of summed up exactly what I was going to say. It's like it's knowing yourself before you can then react to others and like I say, communicate with others. It comes back down to that disc and disc profiling is knowing your energy drivers, what you gravitate more towards and what you're good at, and let other people do what they're good at and the way that then you interact with those people. But it's understanding yourself before reacting, or responding rather, going back to Len's full circle quote, is responding to others.
Yeah, and I think it's you're absolutely right. I think the issue is how you respond to other people, but it's also just being careful not to just mimic other people just because other people are doing it. And I think that's the difficulty about that. So yeah, 100% that there's definitely the view about that, your response, being careful about that.
Yeah, and part of that is emotional intelligence, which can be trained. Absolutely, it's a skill set. And again, it comes down to like understanding that emotions are just little pieces of data that are telling you something, and using different regulation strategies so that you decide how you respond. And then, of course, the more you understand yourself, you'll understand why you're reacting. So understanding what your values are. If someone's triggering you, then often it's a misalignment of values, or is it a limiting belief that you happen to have, someone's triggering your own belief system, and then that's irritating you. So instead of just accepting that you're wound up and you're stressed out, always ask yourself why. And certainly in the clinical environment, where all three of us are clinicians, patient facing, it's understanding that we really have to, sometimes we might have someone really winding us up, but we have to regulate our responses, right? It wouldn't do to lose our temper, but there could be something else going on in our lives, you know. I mean, I've been to work the day after. This sounds ridiculous, it might sound really ridiculous, but I had a parrot when I was a child. We'd had this parrot for 30 years. And it wasn't just a bird that sat in a cage. Lulu, gorgeous little African grey, and he used to speak. He used to mimic our voices. He would come out, you know, he'd walk all around the house. When my mother died, you know, it was me and the parrot alone at home together. And I would come back. I was doing my postgrad. I'd come back to West London. Lulu would come out and he'd like run up the stairs and he'd sit on the end of the bed and he'd follow me all around the house. I mean, and then I had kids and then didn't pay as much attention to poor Lulu. And then Lulu died. So I had this pet for 30 years, and also my mother had died. So this wasn't just a pet. This was like the last thing associated with my mum, because he had been obsessed with my mother. And when she died, he'd gotten like really depressed and pulled his feathers out. I went to work. Of course, I had to go to work. And I didn't feel like being like the nicest, most empathetic person to my patients. In fact, every time there was music on, there were tears going down my eyes, and I'm behind my mask, and I'm treating. But this is what we do, right?
Well, it's interesting.
Professionals.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because one of the, you know, part of my role obviously as head of indemnity to look at these sort of factors, and you know, the things we talk about competence, we talk about confidence, we talk about capability, and those are the words actually that are used by the GDC as well. So you can be competent because you trained, you're able to do it. You're confident because you've done it several times. But one thing that I find fascinating is this concept of capability. And the capability is, can you do that particular job at that particular time on that particular person? Whether it's you're decorating, whether it's a workman, we've now got workmen doing the kitchen. Is he able to do what he's supposed to do? He's probably very competent. He's very confident. But actually today, as you say, there may be something going on in his head, other human factors that means he can't do that particular job. And our job is pretty important. And I've seen a number of cases where you have a complete disaster of a case, and you're thinking, how did that happen? You're actually a specialist. How did that happen? And when you talk to them, you say, actually, my kid was in ITU at the time. He's prematurely born, and he's in ITU. My wife's there. And so that's going in my head. But actually, I've walked into this practice. I'm a specialist, and I don't normally work with this particular nurse or this particular room. So I'm not really that confident or capable today. And like you, they don't say, you know what, today's not the day I'm going to do this. I'm just going to plow on, because actually I feel I have to be capable. I'm a professional person. I should be able to manage it. And actually, when I say this to people, you know, and I use a particular example, and I say, would you? And they say, no, I've never stopped. You know, I've never, you know, unless I'm actually genuinely ill because I came in and I shouldn't have come in. I don't stop and think, maybe I'm not really up to this today. I don't fancy it, because that's a pretty lame excuse. So you carry on. So I think you're absolutely right. We all should be confident enough to say, maybe today's not the day for me to either do the thing or undergo it as a patient, to have things done, or to say, actually, you actually don't think you're up to it. Maybe we should do this another day. You recognize that's actually quite a skill, even to say to the worker who's working the thing. You think, you know what, you're in a bad way. Just take the day off. Come back tomorrow. We're not going to say that. You've paid. You get on with it. So I think it's a challenge.
It's a massive challenge, but it comes down to recognizing and understanding yourself, knowing that you're not showing up as your best self today, and giving yourself a little bit of compassion.
Yeah.
Who else?
The
is
ability
to
say no as well as yes on occasion, then, right?
Absolutely.
So important. I mean, in a profession where people are largely self-employed as well, it really does tend to complicate things that much more, doesn't it? But generationally, Bav, I know you've been doing some research.
Yeah.
So the younger generation, are they a bit more, no, I'm not doing this today?
Yeah, I think they are. I don't think they have any shame in saying it either. You know, they actually say what they feel a lot. and they're trained to do that from a young age. Like even like say my kids at school now, they get a well-being checking every morning. Every morning they get a little card on their desk, and they've got like it's like a traffic light system and they tick it anonymous or ticket, and they put their name on it, and they put it in a little box at the front, and the teacher then goes through them all, and it will say whether they want the teacher to check in on them to see if they're okay. So it says,
Wow.
I'm feeling great, I'm feeling okay, and I can manage it. I'm not feeling okay, I want someone to check in with me, or I'm not good. And so then the teacher can then take them to the side and talk to them. I think it's an amazing thing to do. We should do that in our dental practice. We should do that in the practice.
Well, because I often say, well, one of the practices I work with, like the team huddles, it's like actually at the start of a meeting, everybody please just say how you feel. Give them 3 words. It doesn't mean you want people to pounce on you and say, oh, you poor thing. But then understand that maybe that's why that person isn't showing up at their best today, because they've got a lot going on.
Yeah.
I'm really stressed today, or I'm really tired today. So
Yeah.
have a little bit of compassion, understanding, and forgiveness, right? They're all
exactly that. We all have personalities, and we all want to live to that personality. And then even in professional environments, even with your colleagues, you feel as if you've got to show up as this person that people expect you to be. But exactly as you say, Len, if you're not capable on that day, you might be capable of it on another day.
Correct.
You might be confident on another day.
Yeah.
But on that particular day, you know what? Actually, I'm not feeling 100%. So, don't expect too much from me in this meeting, or don't expect, this. But to actually, no, today I'm feeling great. I'm happy to take more of the burden on and let somebody else, on a little bit.
Yeah. No, I agree.
It's quite a nice thing to do. But back to your point, I think generationally it is a big thing. I think the younger guys have got it right.
Yeah, actually they probably have. I think we've all 3 of us have concluded that. So Len, our time is running out, and actually you've touched on so many elements that are in the Nail It system. I absolutely love that. But of the 6 overarching pillars, which resonates with you, which you feel is the most important?
For me, I think it's integrity. I think, this idea of ensuring your actions and decisions match your true purpose and values is really, really important. And I think, the reason why I think it's important partly is because in the world of AI, the whole concept of authenticity and integrity are seriously at risk. I've just done an article, an opinion piece for the BDJ. Finished it off, and I thought it's actually to do with a legal case. And I thought, tell you what, I'm going to run the legal case through ChatGPT, a paid version of ChatGPT, and said, produce me 2,000 words, and take it from the perspective of the dentist, criticize the experts, have a reference to Bolam, Montgomery, whatever. 10 seconds later, it produced 2,000 words. Okay, fantastic, great. Look at it. I think that's impressive. It quotes various articles, including one from my co-author, Tara Renton. And I'm thinking, sure, did you write this? And I then got the 6 or 7 references checked, because I happened to be in the BDA, by the librarian. All of them were wrong. All of them were made up by ChatGPT. And you're thinking, okay, so is that authentic? And then there's one particular phrase which I thought had a really nice ring to it. And I thought, okay, so I said to the librarian, this is a really good quote. Who is a dumbass? She said, it doesn't exist. ChatGPT made it up. So I said, okay, so what do? Do I plagiarize it? Do I just use his words? Okay, whose words are they? They don't belong to anybody. ChatGPT made these words up. They're actually a really nice phrase. I'm thinking, what do I do? What do I do? Do I then write this article was assisted by AI? Because then people say, well, the whole of it being assisted by AI. I've only used one phrase. So where are we in terms of authenticity? And I think we are really, really going to be challenged with this whole concept of that. And I'm taking one of the quotes I use as well in some of my presentations is Albert Camus's one: integrity has no need for rules. And I think that's actually quite fascinating, because your sort of true moral behavior stems from this sort of internal personal commitment to honesty and ethics, rather than sort of compliance to just a whole set of rules. And in my field of work, in terms of the professionalism, in terms of ethics, in terms of integrity, where integrity is being challenged by your regulator, you see a whole spectrum of conduct and behavior. So, so for me, integrity is such a key part of our lives, our professional lives, and also our personal lives. So for me, that's the one that rings through true, because also it requires personal responsibility. You've got to take responsibility for your actions, and I think that for me is the key thing, particularly when you are being challenged about your conduct, your behavior, what you've been up to. Ultimately, it's going to be down to can't blame anybody else. It's got to be me. And I think that's the real. So for me, that's the nail it one for me is integrity.
I love that, and so beautifully said, especially that last bit you said about rules. And I think about myself, that word always niggles me. It's like, I don't have rules. I don't live by rules, because I just am. And that encompasses exactly what you said. So the integrity piece, it's my favorite, and it's created, the system is the valuable being blueprint. So in that we have values, authenticity, leadership. So your self-leadership, understanding who you are, what you want, and how you're going to achieve it. You have understanding, which we touched on today. You have behavior. So again, conscious behavior. So that comes into that response piece. Ambition. So healthy ambition, legacy, and excitement. So keeping the passion and keeping the purpose to underline it. Yeah, it's such a powerful piece. And when you master all of those components, this is all about making everything so much easier for you. You start streamlining, right? It becomes effortless flow, which is what gets rid of the stress and elevates your success. So you can have those aspirations rather than firm goals, and you go with the flow, and things happen because you say yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. You've been an amazing guest, Len. I have so enjoyed our discussion. Thank you so much. And like so many of our guests, Bav, we're going to have to get him back.
I know. You could chat to Len forever.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Len.
Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Cheers, mate.
Wow, Bav, that was incredible. Love that.
Yeah, I knew he'd be great. Like I say, he's my original mentor. Someone I've looked up to for 20 years since I graduated now. Who's my VT trainer, along with Raj Ratan, my VT advisor. And I think he's obviously rubbed off on me because I like to say yes to things and opportunities. And I don't think I'd be where I am now if it wasn't for Len. So I'd have to thank him for that. And the funny thing is, Len was one of the few people when I graduated didn't work 5 days a week. Right, he used to work I was like, "Where's Len today?" He's like, "Oh, he's doing this, he's doing that." It's like, how does he know where he's going in the morning? And again, that's rubbed off on me because I don't like to be in the same place with the same environment 5 days a week. It helps me be able to work in flow when I am there, knowing that the next day I'm doing something else. I'm in a different environment, or I'm doing something completely different. And I think the beauty of Len's career and what I'm trying to model myself on is having that interest in dentistry and knowing that dentistry is not just drilling and filling all day. There's so much to dentistry and so much you can get out of the career.
Yeah, and also very much the idea that you've found a niche, you found something that works for you, so you end up being able to be in flow with yourself, right? I think
passionate, being passionate, doing things that you want to do. Life's too short to do something you don't enjoy every day.
It definitely is. It most definitely is. So well said. Brilliant. Okay, that's all we've got time for. So thank you so much for listening. Please do hit the subscribe, tell all your friends about us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Nail It podcast. We would love it if you would leave us a 5-star review. And if you'd like to feature as one of our guests, or you're ready to nail it, then check out our events, programs, and educational courses by visiting nailitindentistry.com.